ask your peers. So when you're looking at another teacher's data, when you're looking at these observed learning gaps, or ask a question so that you can find out. It could be based on growth, or it could be based on.
Well, I'm really interested in what Kathy did with these kiddos that were so low on letter ID, for them to have such a huge gain in just 4 weeks. Because I would like to try whatever she's doing with some of my lower guys, or maybe it's something Kara could implement. I mean, that's amazing growth.
I'm not taking anything away from Kathy, because she's good. But when you remove children from that environment of noise and, you know, I know when I was the interventionist, there wasn't really anything to look at except me and what we were doing. And
So
I
just a
think
change in
just
environment.
that quiet and
Did she do
direct
like a letter
focus.
of the alphabet chart? What did you ask her to?
She does ABC bingo with them. She started out with their names, and Linda did that too, because I said focus on the letters that are in their name. And then.
So let me ask you something. When they come back to the classroom and you're asking them to apply that knowledge, what's happening?
There's just a world of difference in what, how they could apply it before, and now that they kind of, because before it was also foreign to them, but no, they're more focused. Of course, I know they've matured.
Okay. And you see them being able, so like this little girl that's at 46 now, you see her being able to apply those 46.
She left.
Oh, gosh darn it.
Yeah.
Let's look at Carly Sue then.
Carly's down here, from 7 to 16.
So you see her being able to use those 16 letters pretty consistently? Or was it just because so that's the other piece of it when we're looking at this data then that we want to ask. If they're able to perform that function in isolation, right, then it becomes a question then, are you seeing it carry over? And then that's where you're looking at whether or not we have some instructional gaps. The way in which we're presenting the information and in the way that we're asking them to carry it over into other situations. What do you think, Rhonda? Not that you're on the hot seat, but that's an important question.
I guess if they know their letters, that's fine. But if you don't know your sight words, then you're not applying those letters where they need to be. And I'm kind of that way with sounds too. It's good to know your sounds, but if you don't know what to do with them, then you just know your sounds.
Okay.
And that's and I know that I'm out in left field with the way thinking is these days. But I can remember in Reading Recovery thinking that's not true. But I remember them saying, you don't need to know your letters to be able to start reading. And
I agree with that because I've been trying so much more different things this year with Orton. And I was totally opposite. I'm like, letter ID, letter ID, letter ID. But now that I'm doing different things, it's all about the sounds. So I don't care if Bob doesn't know what letter C is. Like, that's letter C. If he hears k and can write letter C, or if he sees letter C and can say k when he's reading and writing, like that's what we want to go for.
Or if he can make that connection to that sound.
Right, not identify
Then where
the
are you
name of the
guys
letter.
at with your letter sounds then? And then why do we track letter ID?
What is important?
Well, it is important.
It is, yeah.
But
name them.
so wait a minute, then I have to go back and revise my original question. So I started completely wrong with you guys. So what we should have said is, I jumped to the assumption that all these are critical, but you're telling me that these aren't all critical standards. They're all standards that kids need to know, but the most critical standard is what?
I think sounds.
Okay, so let's look at sounds real quick before we run out of time. See how I messed up with you guys?
I think they're both important, but I've seen a shift this year.
You've seen a shift.
Yes. On the different things I'm doing in class, that it's more, we need more emphasis on the sounds.
So then let's think a little bit then about observed learning gaps. Where are there kids that aren't growing in letter sounds the way that we would want them to?
It's those same kids.
That's what
If there's like a line, it's like they get it or they don't. And it's the same kids that don't know their letters, they're not getting the sounds. I mean, they're making progress, but just not
Just so slow.
very small gains. At least in my class, that's what I noticed.
And so that's one of the things that Kara's doing when she comes in, is looking at those letter sounds. Let's see if we can find some times where kids are making some pretty incredible gains, and then let's ask what they're doing that's different. So are we seeing a difference in a room where we have Orton implemented as opposed to rooms where we don't? That would be a big question, I think.
looking at October, right?
Yeah, you can look from September to October. We just we don't have all the November in yet, so we would just wanna make sure if we're thinking about growth or we're thinking about gains.
Mine are lower, which doesn't, if you don't know how to use all these skills, then you do not have any strategies, and you're not gonna be able to read, and you're not gonna be able to understand what you've read. That's just kind of where I come from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I might be all wrong, but, I've had kids that can come in and whip off every sound there is, can't read a word, don't know how to apply it to that. So like I said, I know I'm low, but it doesn't concern me right now.
Okay.
Maybe it should. You let me know, Carrie.
Well, I think the question becomes then, what's different? Or do you have higher gains as a result of Wharton when you're looking at this overall?
I think so, and mine are really doing a good job carrying over. They're already reading CVC words, they're writing CVC words, they're becoming a lot more independent, and I would never do that this early in the year. But doing Wharton, that's what we're doing, and I've been very surprised.
So you're seeing that thing that Rhonda just mentioned, the way that it carries over between.
But we practice it over and over. We do the blending board every day, and that's not something that may not happen in other classrooms.
Well, it didn't happen in yours before you did Wharton.
No.
Right. And then, the question isn't, again, this isn't about, you two haven't been trained in Wharton.
Yeah.
This isn't a question of doing it right or doing it wrong, but it is a question when you're looking at a room that has this specific training as to whether or not it makes a difference, right? That there is some conversation about that. Okay. So how then, are there ways to use like Kara and Kathy to start thinking more about letter sounds? If that's significant, because what I heard from you guys earlier is that she's doing, what is Kara doing? Or is she doing a
Kara
combination
does
of
a
everything?
combination.
She does a combination. She started working on CVC words with my kids this week and spelling them and
Like those low kids, every day, it's letter ID, letter sounds, counting, number recognition, like the four basic, most important things she hits every day. And then
yesterday she had like
other
my
kids.
my medium kids who started out low and really made some gains, and pulled those and was working with CVC words with them and getting them to spell those words and stuff. So
Okay. It's kind of then I guess the resounding question then for you guys is whether or not, you're seeing any prominent learning gaps that need to be addressed with instruction. If you're seeing areas where kids aren't making enough gains, what is it? Is it prominent enough that you need to think about changing the way that particular group is taught? And then, again, for you guys, it is a question of how you use resources.
Yeah, I think those lower kids, they need to have those lessons more times in the whole group, and that small group or one-on-one time is, a different environment or just the attention that they can get.
Absolutely.
But
And
they just need to
yeah.
expose more often than your regular.
they're just gonna grow at a slower rate than the rest of our kids, and just give them that additional support, which I think we're doing.
I do too. So do you need more? So like I'm thinking about on Tuesdays how we have kind of these open chunks of time. There are probably resources that I could pull. It would be one day a week. Would it matter? Is that something you would like for me to look at in terms of scheduling to help?
I think my classroom is okay. Jenny comes in a couple times, Mondays and Tuesdays. She's in my room a lot, and she
Right.
pulls my low kids constantly.
Okay.
Kara's in there every day in the morning, and then sometimes in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I have a volunteer friend that comes once a week.
Okay.
I wouldn't turn it down, but
And you
I
have
think
Jenny.
okay.
You both have Jenny too, right? She rotates through, so you feel like you have that kind of. Okay. That was my primary question then. Okay. That's it. Just making sure that we're looking at it and we're asking ourselves why and how kids are learning, and if there's anything that we can do a little bit differently. And it sounds like you already made a revision with your use of Kara, which is paying off.
And that was all her idea, and it's been really good.
It's been
Very
really
good.
helpful that she's going through
She's a lot more confident this year and not afraid to
going
ask
through her
questions
teaching program and stuff
make
too,
ideas.
giving her, she feels a little bit more empowered.
Yeah, I think Kara's awesome.
I was blown away by the amount of growth that I was seeing generally when I looked at your data from October to November. I mean, and even, there are some way kids with some way concern. But as long as we're pulling the resources there for them, we know that we might be identifying something more significant. And that's just the reality when we're talking about K, right? The retentions are doing very well.
Yes.
I mean,
Very well.
And we're already at mid-year, so it's not just because, they're being pushed a little bit more, being asked to do more. Centers are now in every single room. Huge differentiation, looks a lot different in every single room. You guys rocked it pretty early this year.
I feel like my reading groups, they're more confident this year. Usually the beginning of the year it's like total chaos, but I really feel like I'm impressed so far. I really liked what I've seen.
We've seen
with
that in
kids.
first grade with the Orton kiddos too. It's pretty impressive. Okay, we're